Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my channel here on General Spear Creates. I am Christopher the Artist here, and we are moving on with the Captain Rex 501st build from the last video which we did, which was with the helmet, which we got all cleaned up, painted up, ready to go, essentially ready for trooping. Today we're going to be working on the arms, and just like back in the helmet video, we are going to do a complete assembly and painted process. You'll need for this project, you'll need of course your shoulder armor pieces here. You'll need your front and back halves of each side of the bicep and forearm pieces here. You'll also need your hand plates. You will need your compad mount here. And you'll also need this little tiny button here that's made of resin, as well as this strip of, or this rectangle here that has two sets of 3 buttons, and then a big button on the top here that comes out of this little bag that's included in the kit. It has a few other pieces in here, but we'll get to those. You'll also need some tools. You'll need a craft knife. You'll need some scissors. You'll need some marking pens. You'll need both Sharpies, or a Sharpie-like pen, basically. And you'll also need this. This is an acrylic white paint pen that we're going to be using for some of the line work later after the paint job. Specifically, this one is from Volsky. I'll include a link in the description below of where I got it off of Amazon. Probably, however, a better paint pen out there is going to be what's known as a Posca Paint Pen. It's an acrylic paint pen that works for a lot of different surfaces. Tends to be a lot fuller detail or more opaque paint than these guys, basically. But these will do in a pinch. You also need glue. I've got my CA glue and accelerant here. You'll also need some sort of filler. Now this here is, for example, is a mason jar of ABS sludge, which is a mixture of ABS plastic and acetone. I have a bunch of this left over from a host of different other clone projects, but you don't need to use that. You can get away with doing a build like this with just using the CA glue and the kicker here as the main filler to fill in the gap, and also glue the piece together. And then you can use Bondo or like the Bondo spot putty as a filler over that. Something else I'm gonna try probably off camera with another project. I've seen, what is it, Uncle Jesse. He is a YouTuber who does a lot of 3D printed and 3D print workshop tips and tricks and everything. And something I saw recently, I'll link this video below, is using the resin material that's used for resin printing as the filler for your 3D prints. And subsequently, I think it could probably also be used for this application. I don't know. I have not tried it, so it's not verified. But it is a possibility. I'll link that I'll link that video in the description below. Sorry, the video cut out there for a moment. The last things you'll need for this project are going to be some Velcro. You'll also need some gloves here, nitrile gloves here. And then for the paint, you'll need some sort of primer. It doesn't matter if it's black, gray, red, whatever the case may be. Just some sort of primer to coat the plastic such that you can, such that the paint layers can adhere accordingly. Then you're gonna need some flat whites. And then for the 501st blue that I use for Rex, that I've used for Jesse, that I've used for a lot of other clones that incorporate the 501st blue, I use Rust-Oleum's Brilliant Blue as the base layer. And then on top of that, I use a misted coat of Gloss Deep Blue. You can find those at like a lot of hardware stores. You can find them at, Home Depot. You might be able to potentially find it at, you can definitely find it through Amazon for sure. I recognize that not a lot of countries will have access to the Rust-Oleum brand. I've mentioned this before in my intro video, or at least I think I did, but I'm mentioning it now. And I think I also mentioned it in my last video on the helmet. If you don't have that brand specifically, color match to the best of your ability. The 501st specifically does not promote any one paint brand over another. And so it's always best to color match as best you can. Sometimes that may take some trial and error. So always have test pieces. I always keep a few extra pieces of plastic just in case I need to test stuff out for paint and whatnot, especially if I'm working on like a new costume or whatever. So that's always a good thing to do. Lastly, you'll need some sort of sealer. Now, for the 501st, for Captain Rex, and actually for a lot of the clones, for a lot of the animated clones specifically, there is an option to do what either a matte or a satin finish. And basically what that translates to, if you're not familiar with it, is either if it looks flat, basically, or if there's a little bit of a shine. I opt technically more so to do the matte clear, which shows up a little bit better. It's more true to what's in the show. The satin finish shows up better for like photographs. So if you're aiming to do a lot of photography with your costumes, satin shows up much better as a finish for photography than a matte sealer does. So just a few little tips and tricks. Anyways, now that we got everything going on here, let's go ahead and get started and be with you in a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am just getting my workspace set up here. I'm going to set these arm pieces aside for right now. We're going to save those for a bit. Same with the shoulder bells. We're going to start with the hand plates. The easiest possible piece in your entire costume setup are always going to be the hand plates. And in this case, because literally all it is just tracing around the lines and everything here, around the indentations, and cutting that out, sanding that up, and they're basically ready for paint. So that's really all there is to it. So we're going to go ahead and begin marking up. You can use a pencil with this, but I just like to use whatever I have handy, which in this case is a Sharpie. I know there's already an indentation line, but I just like to go around and really just draw each piece on there. And this technique is applicable not only to this hand plate here for the animated Phase 2 clones, but it's also applicable to basically every other trooper out there that has a hand plate set up, especially if you're doing like an ABS kit where it's come off the vacuum form mold. If you've not requested the entire kit to be trimmed, it'll look something like this, regardless whether it's a clone, whether it's a stormtrooper, death trooper, FOTK, the Last Jedi TK, Sith troopers, whatever the case may be. So a lot of the techniques that I'm actually showing you here are going to be applicable towards that. So I've got it all marked up here. I did a little bit of a line draw there, but that's all right. It's going to be covered up with paint. Now, nice sharp utility blade or a craft blade, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some work gloves. It'll just take me a second. So I'm going to cut right here, come back with a work glove so I can better protect my hand, or at least my other hand, my non-slicing hand. And I'll be right back with you. Okay, now I have my glove. We're all set and protected. Just in case the blade basically slips along here is why I have my glove and everything. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do what is known as the score and snap method. Just tracing around the lines here. Subsequently, in the beginning of the video, there are additional materials that I did not mention that you will need. You will definitely need sandpaper of varying grits. I would definitely get a starting grit of something either like 60 or 80 grit, something like that. Because the filler that you'll be working with will definitely cover up the seams. And while you'll try to apply that filler later on, as I'll show you in the video, as cleanly as possible, you will still have some cleanup work to do. Ideally, if you can get it, a belt sander will go a long way for this particular part of the project. See the blade just there slipped, and it would have nicked my thumb if the glove weren't there. Safety in action. Rather have the glove and need it, or I'd rather have the glove and not need it than to have to need it and not have it there, kind of deal. If that made sense. So, I also brought out stuff you'll eventually need for strapping. You'll need some elastic webbing here. Doesn't really matter the size. This is just 1-inch webbing essentially, which is definitely thick enough for our purposes. And then I got the same width of some nylon webbing here that doesn't stretch. That you will definitely need. Okay, so now with those material parameters out of the way, we're going to go ahead and break this apart. And what I like to do, I have it close by here. 1 second. I have a pair of pliers, basically. It's not required that you have these. I have these as an optional thing, but they definitely help. Because for the snap method now, we've scored the entire thing. And now we're going to go ahead and snap this apart. This definitely saves your fingers. And then you can kind of work around like that. That's one hand plate all free. Now, for the other one. I did an Instagram live video recently where I did a little bit of Q&A, and somebody asked me how quickly can I do a like a Rex costume. And I said, well, if it was the only thing that I was doing, I can probably get it done in a week to 2 weeks. If it was the only thing that I was doing. And I am looking around for my sandpaper. My setup is cleaner. I think I may have not found it. One quick second, guys. I may cut here for just a moment. Okay, we are back. I have I have 320 grit sandpaper here, but it's a little too fine for what I need. I am just going to use some 80 grit sandpaper. I need, like, some sort of small storage thing for sandpaper. That way I have easy access to it. Actually, once I clean up some more of my space, I definitely have easy access to it. So yeah, just tear off yourself a small sheet. Sheet. And then we're going to just go around the edges here, cleaning it up. This is kind of a vital part. It's one that a lot of people can easily skip over because, you know, they might be so excited to work on the armor and everything to get ready for the next step, but this is definitely a vital part. And the reason being is because when you're doing the scoring and snapping method, there's this edge. There's this nice sharp edge left over from the snap method. It's not like a knife edge. It's, you know, definitely a flat surface, but there's definitely this hard edge from the plastic that, if not taken care of, even through your undersuit, and let's face it, there are some undersuits that are thicker than others, you will still probably feel it. And if you don't, at the very least, it might actually rip into your undersuit. And if you're doing like an animated clone, a lot of us wear the compression shirt with the running pants and everything, no labels, of course, just in black. And that gets the job done. But if you're doing, like, say, a Death Trooper, where that suit is, you know, depending on where you get it, it can be like $350, $400. Or if you make it yourself, which, you know, there's that. There's a lot of work that goes into that particular undersuit because of all the pieces that are there. And I know, because I am I have my own Death Trooper for the Legion that I'm actually working on, kind of a full upgrade system where I'm upgrading all the armor pieces because I wasn't satisfied with what I had before. But you want to make sure that if you're doing like an ABS kit, which there is an ABS kit out there for the Death Trooper, if you're doing the score and snap method, you want to make sure that there's no sharp edges with that, because you do not want your undersuit to tear. So definitely take the time, no matter what costume you're working on, to do the finer details here. And it doesn't take much to do this. Especially the corners. I mean, the edges are one thing, but especially the corners where there's like, if you did like a straight cut all the way through on both edges, you'll have a sharper corner that needs to be sanded down in order to do your stuff. All right, so those are both the hand plates there. Now we're going to move on. Set those aside and move on. The shoulder bells. All right, so I mentioned I'm actually going to go ahead and put this plastic in a different place. Keep the area clean. Keep the area nice and tidy. So, I mentioned in my intro video that there were two parts to each of the shoulder bells here. And this is the case for both versions of the animated clones, the 1 through 3 season animated clones, and then the 4 through 7. There are 2 pieces to each shoulder belt. And as I mentioned in my intro video, it took me a long time to realize what these in particular were. These are actually the inserts that go on the inside of the shoulder belt, like so. So this is the exterior, this is the interior. And the reason being is because this recess here on the inside actually creates that lift that you see in the show, essentially. Well, let me take a second here on the camera and show you for just a moment. Hello. So, if I didn't have this, if I went up to my shoulder here, there might be a little bit of a raised effect there, but not much. Hence why You have this bit go in there, and already that's a noticeable difference. So that's why you have the insert, essentially. Back down here. Okay, let me go down a little bit more. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to first off do the same thing we did with the hand plates and trim the entire apparatus here. So let's get started. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to all of these. And I might speed it up here. Okay, now that we've done that, I put the Sharpie up here because it's almost out of ink and I don't really want to use it. All right, now we do the same thing of the score and snap. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and score all of these and then we'll snap them in sequence. Okay. Now, we're ready to glue these guys together. One thing I'm doing is I'm just checking the fit of the inserts here, because there is a slight difference between left and right for the shoulders. And that difference comes down to that there's a more curved edge for the shoulder belt here, and there's a more flat edge on this side here. If memory serves, I think the flat faces front. Oh, I have to go back and look. I'll have probably like a notation somewhere in the video here on which side faces which. But I think this one here fits a little bit better. Yeah, that fits a little bit better on the inside to that one. No, it doesn't. The other one does. Yeah, this one fits a little bit better. Okay. The other shoulder belt here to confirm that. Yeah, that works a little bit better. There still will be this terraced effect here, which is where the belt sander is going to come into play here. But we're gonna go ahead and glue these guys together. What I like to do, take my CA glue here. I'm not even gonna use any of the kicker necessarily, but I'm gonna go all the way around this edge here, just dotting it. Actually, might take my glove off here potentially. And you will get glue on your hands. It's kind of just inevitable. Oh, that was the other thing that I needed here. Yeah, I got a few nearby. I have some clamps. Clamps are going to be definitely useful here. And I do not have enough out here in my workshop. I have more in my office, which is where I was working on stuff earlier. You might not be able to tell here. I got the clamps on either side here. You might not be able to tell on this edge. There might be a little bit of shine here. That's glue spillage, basically, which is exactly what we want. We want there to be a little bit of glue spillage, because that shows us that it is pretty secure. So I'm pretty pleased about that. That'll take like a moment to dry, and I might just use a little bit of kicker to accelerate the process. I'm waving it back and forth to cool it down a little bit or keep it cool. The accelerant plus the CA glue here creates a chemical reaction that basically allows the glue itself to set instantly. And I do mean instantly. You definitely don't want... It's very instant. But the chemical reaction that takes place also creates heat. And it actually, if you do the accelerant too fast, the glue will actually, it'll actually cause it to steam almost or burn, essentially, if you do it too quick. So I wave it back and forth after doing the accelerant just to make sure that the temperature stays a little bit, more manageable. So that's all set to go there. We'll do the other one here. And what I might do differently this time is I might actually do the glue on the inside of the shoulder belt here and then set this in. I think we'll do it that way. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take this glove off because I do not have enough dexterity. You do not need a lot. In fact, I would hazard to guess that the plastic itself will break first before the glue does. It is very strong stuff. Gotta go ahead and set those clamps there to the edges. Like so. Okay. For the most part, that is the shoulder bells. I'm going to go ahead and kick this a little bit. Okay. That is all set to go. Basically, And we will now work on the forearms and biceps. See you in a second. Okay, ladies and gentle peeps. To make it easier, we have all the forearm and bicep pieces here. To make it easier, because these come together, as you've seen in not only the intro video, but also in earlier in this video, I went ahead and I just cut these pieces apart to make it easier for work. Using the score and snap method. You can also use a Dremel if you want to cut these in half, but I just used a score and snap and did that. We're going to focus on the biceps first because those are the easier pieces to tackle. So we'll go ahead and take care of those. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here are the bicep pieces. You will notice when you get this kit that there is a little indentation down here, and Kevin Weir from Imperial Surplus will already have marked this, like this is the right, this is the left side here. These are the front of the biceps for left and right. But you'll notice that it's on the piece that you will eventually trim off. So what I like to do is go on the inside and just mark which side's right, which side's left, and the same thing goes for the right back and the left back as well. So just trimming those up and everything. What I'm going to do with these here is doing what is called a rough trim, which is basically getting rid of this curved edge, which is part of the flashing material. And there's actually a little bit of an indentation. This is the left back in particular. And we're going to go ahead and actually, let's see, how do we want to do this? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and actually trim the edge of this off, right to where that indentation is. Yeah, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. And we're going to do that to both the left back and the right back. We're going to save the front pieces for right now. So we're going to go ahead and mark this up as we do. You'll do this to both sides of the left and the right back. Same with the indentation line here. Just follow that curve all the way around. Okay. There we are. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and score and snap them. Gotta remember to wear my glove here. Just a little bit of extra protection because you never know. Never know when an accident may happen. Okay. Now to snap the pieces off. So those are your back half pieces there, left and right. Now we're going to move on to the front halves. And the front halves here are a little bit special, which is why I did the back ones first. There's this curved edge like we had before here, but then there's this little bit of a raised indentation here. This is where, if your bicep fits, this is where you actually join the piece together. This is for the right. That butts up with that edge there. Of course, we need to cut this little curved bit off, but that's where it glues into place there. Now, we'll go ahead and cut this edge here first, and then we'll get to that. So that's where I like to take a pair of scissors, because the plastic is thin enough. Just cut this edge right off. And the front halves, both left and right, have both a curved edge on each side here. And this curved edge is just left over from the vacuum form process that Kevin Weir over at Imperial Surplus uses. So now all we need to do is cut off the bottom and the top or excess material on each side here. Well, we'll cut the edges off that here in a moment. Okay, now that we have all this trimmed, we're going to talk about fitting. This is the first piece that we've worked on so far, in which fitting the armor to your body is going to be, kind of key. And I'm actually going to bring the camera up so I can talk to your all's faces here. So, fitting your armor to your body is more of an art than it is a science. There's a lot of different possibilities. There's a lot of different pieces to fit your body. The shoulder bells, those are kind of there. The hand plates, you don't really need to worry about sizing those at all. The biceps, the forearms will be a little bit of a thing to do. Pretty much the remainder of the armor, sorry if I bumped the mic there, pretty much the remainder of the armor for the most part is about how you size it to your body, basically. And so the biceps are actually a really easy kind of starting point, which is why I started with the arms in the first place, because then you can use the same techniques to apply to the rest of the armor. For me personally, I know for a fact from having done multiple kits that the Imperial Surplus Bicep, as is, when it's all glued up like so, fits my bicep perfectly. And this is where you'll take a little bit of like painter's tape or masking tape or whatever. You'll tape this up, basically. You'll form it over your body, and you will mark off if you need to close it in a little bit, or if you need to widen it, basically. If you need to close it in, don't cut off the edge material here on the front part of the bicep. cut it off on the inside or on the back piece. So that way you still have that hold there. So that's if you need to cut it smaller, if you got a smaller bicep or something like that. If you have a larger bicep, you will need to extend it a little bit. You'll need to add a shim. And there's going to be a little bit more body work to be involved with that. If that's the case, again, add it to the back piece here, not the front piece, and do it to both sides. That way it's symmetrical. That's why Kevin Weir, I don't have anything access ready available. That's why he sends extra ABS plastic should somebody need to add some extra material in order to account for how big their bicep is. The same applies for how big their forearms might be, or their midsection, or their thighs, or their chest and back plate and everything. It's all about how it's sized to you. And so this is kind of the first step to doing that. For me personally though, like I said, I know that out of the box, once this is all trimmed up, I don't need to do any modifications. I can just go right in and glue those halves together, and that'll be perfect for me specifically. For you, you will need to size it and see how it fits. If you need to cut it a little smaller, cut it a little smaller. If you need to add more plastic, add more to the back half here. We'll get into where you would need to add and trim for each piece as we go forward. That way it'll work out for you. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to gluing. Okay, so once you have your pieces trimmed, or your pieces trimmed and sized and shimmed and everything, or whatever the case may be you need to do for you, we're going to go ahead and start gluing. And I'm going to move these plastic pieces out of the way. This will be perfect for ABS Sledge later. So, now that we have those out of the way for now, we're going to talk about gluing. What I like to do, I've got the right front and back here. I like to do and glue what will face on the outside, which in this case is this side. I like to do glue the outside facing surface first, which is this is the right front and back. This is the front piece. This is the back piece. This is the outside here. This is the inside. I like to glue this side first. And the reason being is because I want this nice and flush. This is the part that people will see. And thus, I want this to be nice and clean. So, I'm going to fill this area with glue here. I've basically flooded the entire surface. And now, go in and do that. I'm going to go ahead and clamp this down. Can never have too many clamps. As any person in any workshop space will tell you, you can never have too many clamps. So, and I'm not getting a lot of glue squeeze out. So what I will do is this. I'm going to offset the clamps a little bit, and this is where the whole method of using the glue as a filler comes in. Because I'm going to run a bead right along there. I'm going to let that sit for just a moment. And I just did a small pass with the spray or the accelerant there, basically. And what that does is that actually creates a nice filler. I'd like to use the glue as a filler. I mean, I do it the same way as Kevin Weir over at Imperial Surplus does it, because he has some tutorials as well. That creates a really, really nice, clean, filled gap. It raises the valley up to where it's almost parallel with all the rest of the surfaces. I'm going to do the same thing on the inside here with a little bit of an extra seal. That way this is nice and strong. Let that sit for just a moment there before using the accelerant. I'm tilting it back and forth so it can kind of get all in the crevices there. Now, I missed my target area there. I was not on target. All right, and that sets like pretty immediately. I'm moving it back and forth because I can feel it kind of getting warm. I don't need the clamps anymore for right there. And that's the outside edge taken care of. And that's really strong. Like I said, the plastic itself will fail before the glue does. That's how strong this stuff is. So, we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Closing the gap. Okay. And you don't have to use CA glue. You can technically glue this entire thing with ABS sludge. You don't even have to use any glue at all for the construction of this process. And that's what makes ABS sludge so nice, is because that itself is probably even stronger than glue. And that will last a long, 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 long time. Could do the same thing on the inside here. That way the seam is nice and strong. There we go. By the way, one bottle of this and a bottle of this will do the entire armor. The combo is like 30 bucks, but that's all the glue you will need for the entire armor. You might even have a little bit left over depending on things. But that is one bicep. Now we're going to go ahead and quickly do the other one. I'm going to time lapse through this one so you get the idea. That there is the left bicep. Let's go ahead, tilt the camera up, put these on, Well, I could have closed these in a little bit, but I'll put a little bit of foam padding in there, and those should turn out just fine. It'll leave me a little bit of room also because I'm doing a workout regime. Give me a little bit of growth through there. But those are your biceps. Now we move on to the forearms. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we are with the forearms. And like before, with the biceps and stuff like that, we have marked out left and right forearms, basically. Just on the inside, doesn't really matter where it is, just has an identifier for which piece is which. We're going to start by going ahead and trimming out, of course, the backs or the underneath sides of the forearms, basically. And this actually is really simple because all it is you're just following this line here or this this edge here, making it as clean as you can all the way across. And we're going to go ahead and just actually mark that out with a pen. And again, if you are sizing this to your own body, this will be the part that either you will add plastic to it if you need it a little bit bigger, especially around the wrist, given how tight it is, or you will trim down should you need it a little bit smaller. Now, my wrists are actually pretty small. Hands are a little bit larger, but my wrists are pretty small, and I can generally squeeze through an arm guard like this when it's all put together. So I'm not terribly concerned about trimming it. Or adding an extension to it. So, I misplaced my my cutting apparatus. I will be right back. Okay, so now we have our cutting apparatus here, our craft blade. I'm gonna go ahead and get on my safety glove. Actually, before I cut this, I'm going to go ahead and trace out the lines for this other one here. Kind of just follow this faint little curve. And then mark off where the indentation is. You could also probably get away if you are having if you're wanting it to be kind of a tight fit, you can probably get away with trimming off this excess edge here by maybe a 1/4 of an inch at the most. Technically speaking, there is supposed to be this little return edge on the end of the cuff here, but you can get away with trimming that back a little bit should you need the room, kind of deal. It's a way to kind of cheat it in, so to speak. Go ahead and begin trimming this off. I could use scissors for this long edge here. But the score and snap method will reveal or will yield a cleaner cut, basically. Okay. And then this back end here. There we go. Now, we are going to go ahead and snap these guys. We're going to snap this one in just a moment. I'll go ahead and do this side real quick. by the way, I do apologize for the length of the video. And while I could have split up the arms into their individual pieces, like have the shoulders be one video, have the biceps be another, forearms another video, I thought I'd just get it all done in one shot for the sake of making it easier on me to film all the pieces in sequence. And if it makes for a longer video, I'd rather have it be thorough and to answer as many questions as possible, show you guys the process, than to have it short and have people wonder, well, what goes on here? How do you trim this? How do you extend this? How do you go about painting that and all that kind of stuff? So I'd rather just take the time. I'll time lapse where I can, but I'd rather just take the time, and since I'm teaching and showing people how to do this, I want to take the time to do it properly. And if people complain about how long it takes, well, I am doing this for the benefit of everybody.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, just jumping in here real quick. So there's going to be a cut here in just a moment because for some reason the video decided to either stop recording or had a little bit of issues. But essentially, you just want to go around with the backs and continue cutting and scoring and trimming off the excess material as shown here. And then we will move on to the forearm tops.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. All right, so we are going to continue now that we have both the forearms drawn up here. I'm going to tilt the camera down a little bit so you all can see. All right, there we go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and trim these guys up accordingly, just like the back of the forearms here. And got a nice utility knife here. And go around like so. And as you can see, there's that little V there that is part of our groove in the that separates the elbow and the forearm. And I just trimmed that little wedge off basically. So now we're going to go ahead and trim the rest of this up. Okay, that's one done there. And now we're going to do the other side. Okay, so there is both outside and inside or complete. So now we're going to go ahead and work on the assembly process.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the audio cut out once more. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm doing the same thing as you would with the rest of the armor. You fit it to yourself. Ideally, you do this with tape and mark off where you need to cut and trim and everything. I know that these forearms fit me pretty well, so I don't need to worry. We're cutting a little bit of the ends off kind of deal just to make sure that the fit fits flush at the cuffs and the elbow. And then we're loading the seam up with glue and clamping it in place. And then we'll, of course, spray some accelerant on there. Now, the other thing that I do for the left forearm here is that I actually end up gluing both sides together, and you'll see me later in the clip have a little bit of trouble with trying to get the arm off. I would really only do this method, and it's perfectly okay to glue both sides together, but I only do this method if you've got everything pretty much trimmed up and in the proper place that things need to be. And also, just to make sure that the fit is just right, because getting your arm in and out of the gauntlet is, going to be a pain if you don't have it, correct. And of course, as you will see eventually, it's a pretty fun time. I do show the other method on the right arm, which we'll see in a bit, of the more common method of doing the outside seam with glue and then doing Velcro on the underneath side. So we'll get to that in just a few.
Okay, ladies and gents, so I quickly wanted to show off my left forearm guard here. These are my gloves that I have for the costume. I did have to trim a little bit, like an 1/8 of an inch around this edge here, because I wasn't quite able to fit my hand through. On the fly. The question is, can I get it out now? Barely. Oh, this might be a problem. This might be a problem. Hold on. Yes, I was able to get it out. So that's why you always test your armor first and everything before you wear it. Might need to do a little bit more trimming and everything, but that's the left forearm there. I am going to also work on the right forearm. What I may do is I may do the other method of actually leaving there to be a gap such that I can actually have it open a little bit. And I'll actually show that off here. So, same thing as before, of flooding this entire plane here, because this is what's going to be holding your armor together. Like so. I'm going to go ahead and run a bead of glue along here. Wait a couple seconds here, and then go ahead and excel that. And we'll do the same thing on the inside here. So now
Now we're going to do this a little bit more proper. Same thing as before. We're going to go ahead and snip a piece of the carpet side Velcro here. Trim the width off just a little bit. Showing you the difference of what to do and what not to do. Which sometimes is good, because some people have made the mistake of gluing the forearms together completely. Okay. Yeah, some people have made the mistake of gluing the forearms together completely. And so the method of fixing that is making sure to cut in a strategic place, essentially. Go ahead and layer that in there. I'm going to get myself another piece of carpet side Velcro here for down here. Okay, now that I've got that off, let's go ahead and glue this up and stick it down. So now I'm going to cut off two pieces of the bristle side now. Take off the backing there, put this guy in place, and I'm going to do this guy here first. Press that down in place, like so. Now we're going to do the other side down here. That's not what I wanted. Going a little over the gap just to make sure it sits flush. All right, there you are. That is your right forearm, which you can now press close, just like so. And that goes on much easier than doing it the glued method. I will adjust this bit here, but it'll still work out just fine. Okay, there's one more piece that we need to do before we are complete with the arms as far as the assembly, and that is the compad. which goes on the right forearm. You may notice that there's a slight indentation in the on the top of the forearm itself. That is where the comp pad goes. We're going to trace out where we're going to cut the mount first. And I'm actually going to try a different method this time. I am going to try, as opposed to cutting right up to the edge like I normally do, I am going to give myself a little bit of an edge for the sole reason of I want to see how this lies on the forearm itself. And I'm actually going to go ahead, because the plastic is thin enough, it's actually thinner than this plastic here, I am going to cut this out with scissors. Because I know that I'm going to be filling in this space with Bondo and, other materials. I am not terribly worried about it being a clean edge. I still want it to look good. But I want there to be something first. Okay, let's go ahead and see how this lays down. Oh, you know what? That actually lays down quite well. What I used to do, I'm going to tilt the camera up and talk to you for just a moment. What I used to do is I used to take these guys and trim the comp pad right to the edge here, like right up against the wall of the comp pad mount itself. And I would take foam and put that on the inside and mount the foam to the forearm. And there was always going to be like a little bit of a gap, which wasn't always the nicest thing. This method, however, is nice and clean, and I like it. I imagine that's probably how Kevin Weir probably meant it when he designed this bit. That is going to go on very, very well. So, I'm going to try my best to line up the indentation there. I think we're good. I am going to use a clamp and hold this in place, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line on the outside here so I know where to place the comp pad for when we glue it down. Oh, this is going to look so much better. Abso-freaking-lutely, it's going to look so much better. All right, so now what we can do is we can actually go ahead and go on this edge here. Like so. And we want this button here oh, yeah. That's going to be so good. It's going to be so good when that's all cleaned up. All right, I'm going to flood this a little bit. Okay, do a little bit of a bead of glue on the side here. Again, using this as my filler. And then the Bondo is just like the cosmetic. There we go. That is pretty freaking secure. So now all that's needed really is just to fill in that seam all the way around. And that'll be looking real good. All right, so now for the buttons. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some sandpaper and clean up the edges a little bit, because sometimes there's a little bit of flashing material, like there is right there, right over here as well. So it's basically cleaning up the edges to make sure they're flat. And luckily it does not take much to clean that edge up, especially with 80 grit sandpaper. All right, that's looking pretty good. We'll do the same thing for the small little button here, like so. Just gonna go right on the table here. Okay. Oop, looks pretty good. Now we're gonna fit these guys in. Small button right here, real easily, goes in that slot right there. Right like so. So we're gonna go ahead and glue that in. Get a good amount of glue in there. I'm going to let that just dry there for the time being. Now, this guy, the actual comm system itself, fits right in here like so, right in the center, the main slot, with this button being towards the elbow or towards the top of the comm pad here. Just to make sure you know the orientation of that. If it's not clear, there is this line that stops right about there for the setup. Again, we're going to flood the glue comm pad here again. Drop that right in. I actually have a clamp hold this in place while I make sure to glue some of the edges here. Just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, and now I'm going to hit it with a little bit of kicker after it dries for a couple seconds. There we go. That should be relatively secure. All right, now that you have your forearms and now that you have pretty much all your arm pieces done, right like so, you are ready for the next step, which is going to be filling all the seams and sanding all your edges. So let's go ahead and get into that.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to do a little voiceover for this part of the video here and kind of talk to you a little bit about fillers. As you can see, I am using some Bondo spot putty, basically, which is kind of that 2-in-1 glazing compound. It's already got kind of the hardener, everything mixed into it, and it's the 2-stage out of the 3-stage process, basically. This kind of works well if you are doing kind of a budget build and you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on extra materials. I know different things are expensive nowadays, paints, fillers, etc., so forth. And like I said, this works well on a budget. Ideally, though, what you would want to use is the ABS sludge, which is the ABS parts and acetone mixture, to kind of fill in the gaps, and then you can use Bondo. What a lot of people have also used in the clone building community is they've used a product called Evercoat, which is a brand. Evercoat makes a lot of like auto fillers the same as Bondo, and they make this metal glaze, which a lot of people have used. Now, the caveat is at the time of, at the very least, doing the voiceover for this, for a long time, the Evercoat filler was around 30-ish, $35 or so. It's about the same as a lot of Bondo products, for at least like the same, 2-in-1 mixture kind of deal, where you have the filler and then you put in like a very small amount of the hardener. Unfortunately, that particular line of Evercoat is actually being discontinued. So if you can still find it, it's around like $70 right now kind of deal. And it may go up even further, which is just absolutely insane. And that's for like literally like the pint size jar or whatever it was. And it shot up there within a few months, basically just because it's being discontinued. Because I do commissions and everything, I am trying to find some alternatives. There are some other Evercoat products that kind of do in a pinch. And the reason why Evercoat works a little bit better than Bondo works great. I'm not knocking it completely. It's just in terms of a maintenance cost for your armor, the Evercoat tends to work better than Bondo for a couple of different reasons. First off is that the Evercoat mixture is not as brittle when it dries, and it sands even a little better. And then because it's not as brittle, it tends to flex a little bit better. It tends to take paint a little bit better than Bondo from what I've seen. And so that's just a better compound overall. And generally what you would do is you would lay down your ABS sludge, and you would want to let the ABS sludge lay down for a few extra days kind of deal. I obviously I'm not doing that in this video because I'm kind of doing stuff on a budget kind of deal, etc., etc. But ideally you'll want a mixture of ABS and acetone, and you want to let that dry for several days, because when the acetone evaporates from the sludge, it, of course, it helps with, the whole drying process. But this leads to the issue of if you paint the area or do your Evercoat or whatever too soon, like if the acetone has not evaporated all the way, it'll form bubbles in your paint process. There was actually a commission that I had done of a Captain Rex that was sent off to, Jag Eyes Hunter on Instagram, who's a fellow friend and also a fellow clone trooper. He's also in the clone detachment such as I, and he reached out to me and said that the acetone apparently did not evaporate all the way, which I was like, shoot. So it had to be sat a few extra days, had to be sanded back kind of deal, etc., etc. So it was a learning curve, not only for me, but also for him too, because he had never seen that reaction before. So you want to make sure you leave several extra days, maybe even a week, to let the acetone evaporate completely from your ABS sludge mixture, and then you can go in and sand and fill and everything, and then do your paint afterwards. As you can see, I'm kind of just going over, though, with the Bondo, and I end up doing like 2 or so extra layers, I want to say, or maybe even 3, just to make sure that you got really decent coverage, that you're not really even seeing a seam in the scabbage. The spot putty can have this tendency to, really reveal kind of the gaps, so you want to make sure that you got, good coverage and everything. In the next clip, we're going to work on sanding, at least the preliminary sanding, and go from there.
Okay, so while the forearms and the biceps are drying, we're going to move on to sanding the shoulder bells. Remember these guys? As mentioned, we left these off, or basically when we left these off, there was this little bit of an edge from the bottom where the insert that goes inside the exterior shoulder bell. That's where the belt sander is going to come in. We're just going to basically sand the edge flush. You can do this with like 80 grit sandpaper. It just might take you a bit. Belt sander makes it go a long way. And I am going to grab some ear protection such that we can do this safely. Just doing a little bit of cleanup there before moving on. I will probably have some sort of annotation, but you may have noticed in the video that I did a little bit of sanding on the forearms. On the belt sander, that is. So now I'm just going through with some 80 grit sandpaper and just knocking down all the burrs and everything. And cleaning up the edges on each of the pieces. There we go.
There we go. Pretty good there. Hand plates are good to go from earlier. I think my Bondo is still a little damp, so I'm going to go ahead and just let that sit. We'll come back and sand the rest of that. I did apply a little bit more Bondo around the edges of the forearm here. Still a little bit of an indentation, but I hope I can just knock that down with some sandpaper. Maybe even like a mouse sander will also do the trick. I'm not sure. It's pretty soft stuff, the material here, so we might be able to sand that flush pretty easily. But we'll wait for the Bondo to do its thing. We'll come back and we'll get back to it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've painted all of the arm pieces up, we're going to take the hand plates and the forearms aside, and we're going to do a little bit more work to them. And just like in the helmet video, we're going to add some hash lines. What I have right here, these are some of my favorite paint pens out there. These are done by Posca. They are Posca Paint Pens. They are an acrylic-based paint pen. And I actually got these from just the local art store that's in my area that I happen to work at as well. So they're really, really fantastic. And we're going to do our hash marks. So I'm going to check over on my computer here. There are... I'm on the CRL website, basically, for Captain Rex. And there are some black hash marks and some white hash marks for the forearms. And then for the hand plates, there are some white hash marks. And there are 10 on each side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shake this up. I'm going to prime it. Might take me a moment. Okay, so we're going to take our right side hand plate. This is the right side. And the bend here always goes towards the thumb. And the hash marks are actually located towards the thumb itself. So we're going to flip it on its side. And we're going to draw 10 hash marks in the formation of... Well, if I can get my pen to work. There we go. I'm always checking my references here. Making sure I do this on camera for you all. So I'm going to clean those up and fill those in. But I want to get the other side done first. Okay, so now we're going to work on, I'm just going to thicken up these lines a little bit. just like so. I do the same to the right side. Just like so. All right. Now that we got the hand plates done, we have the forearms. We're going to do, since we have to white out the left one first. On the left forearm, there are 19 hash marks. And then it's going to go 3 sets of 5 on this side right here, and then 1 set of 4 right up here. Make sure your pen is primed. All right, just like so. 1, 2, 3 sets of 5, and then a set of 4 at the top. And honestly, it doesn't matter how exact it is, as long as the overall placement is correct. In this case, this is the left forearm. The hash marks are facing towards the inside of the forearm itself. So away from the elbow. And I'm just thickening up these lines and making them a little bit more even. So that way they can be seen from a distance. And there we are. That looks a little bit cleaner there. Now, for the right side. In this case, it is actually going to be using some black hash marks. And in this case, there's 24 of them. So there are 4 sets of 5, this was 3. And then 4 additional hash marks beyond those 4 sets of 5. Okay. So, in this case again, it's also going towards the inside. It's actually easy to tell when you have the forearm on. This is the elbow, of course, it faces towards the outside. It's going to go right to the left of the compad itself. That's the easy way to start out there. And we're going to go, say, 4 sets of 5. Start right at the bottom edge here. Begin marking out my lines. If you want, you could totally use a pencil too and get a gauge on placement, but it's not 100% necessary that you do that. But if you want, you totally could. Okay, there's my 4 sets of 5 there, and then I need 1 more set of 4 to complete the 24. There we are. Now we're going to go ahead and thicken up the lines a little bit, make them a little bit clearer to see. If you don't want to use a Posca, you can definitely use like a Sharpie. That's completely fine. You can use any kind of setup you want. You can even use, like, for example, whiteout pens for the white hash marks on the hand plates and the other forearm. Or you can even just use like a fine liner brush and some paint. That works too. Doesn't matter what way you do it, as long as you got the look correct. There's methodologies to doing a lot of different things. Just trying to bring it in as close as I can and still show you the overall effect. There are thicker tipped Poscas that you could do this with. Like I said, a fine tip Sharpie will also work. But this is just another method. All right, and there you are. There's the 24 black hash marks. Now, with all those hash marks done and ready to go, you are ready to seal off all the arm pieces with a matte clear or a satin clear, depending on what you used for the helmet. Go ahead and use that seal. I'm not going to show that process. Just refer to the helmet video for learning that if you need, or referring to that. It's the same technique, just one coat of either the matte or satin clear over it. You're set to go. Once you have those cleared up, we're going to go ahead and weather these afterwards, and I will show you the techniques on that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we are now going to finalize, of course, the arms, and the first part that we're going to do is actually a bit of Velcro work. We got the shoulder bells and the biceps here. What I do with my gear is a lot of people will opt to actually have some sort of an attachment for that connects both the shoulder and the bicep here. I opt not to do that. I actually have them both separate, and they are only connected via Velcro on the strapping system that I'm going to be doing for the gear. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be cutting up some carpet side Velcro, and I need 4 lengths, 2 longer than the other. The longer ones are going to go inside the shoulder bells. The shorter ones inside the biceps. This is kind of the first step, as it were. So we're going to go ahead and put these inside the shoulder bells. And I need 2 more lengths for the biceps. Okay. So 2 and 2, just like so. We're first, of course, going to take off our backing. And we're going to be adding this just right inside, like so. Smoothing that all out as much as possible. Generally, if I'm doing Velcro work, well, when I'm doing Velcro work for pieces like this, I always want the carpet side Velcro because it's softer than the bristle side. Especially when it's going against, skin and everything. And it may not be too terribly noticeable, but for me personally, I like to feel comfortable, and this offers a little bit more comfort than the bristle-sided Velcro. Again, a little bit more in there. Some people opt to use magnets for this kind of setup, but Velcro is definitely some of the simpler stuff. Some people also use snaps. This is just much simpler. So now, for the shorter sides, what we want is we want the carpet side to face the outside of the bicep itself, meaning when it's worn, it'll face towards the outside of the body. Because the strap is going to go over the shoulder and the bicep itself. So just like so there. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Kind of press it down all in there. And that's what that looks like, basically. So that's the outside of the right.
with the Velcro in there, outside here. And this is the outside of the left with the Velcro just underneath on this side. So that is the shoulders and the biceps. I'm going to put those aside for just a moment while we work on the hand plates. Now for the hand plates, there's a multitude of different ways you can go about doing the hand plate connection. You can use Velcro and sew the Velcro into your gloves, which I'm briefly going to talk about the gloves for just a moment while doing so. A lot of people who do animated clones will use these guys. These are Nomex flight suit gloves. They look something like this. They're actually really, really comfortable. There's no labels or anything like that you need to worry about. If you wanted, you could try and sew on a piece of Velcro on top of the hand right here. So that way the hand plate sits about like so. But what I do, because I really don't want to open up these nice gloves, is I take some of this elastic webbing here and I actually physically glue this inside the hand plate itself. I do 2 straps. Okay. Or rather, I do 2 sets or 2 straps per hand plate. Actually, I should say. And you want them, of course, to be about equidistant in length, if at all possible. So what we're going to do is we are first off going to just see. Oh, I managed to get those pretty much the same size. Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead first off and we're going to glue the bottom, what is going to be the bottom of one of the straps, right to the hand plate like so. And this is the outer edge. This is towards the pinky. On the left side in this case. And I'm going to do the same thing for the top edge over here. And I've slightly angled it. You don't have to, but I've slightly angled it, and so it's gonna look something like that. Next, we're gonna take our bottom edge here, and we're gonna go straight across to the other side here. Okay. You might get glue on your fingers doing this, but that is okay. And I definitely did not cut myself out enough. But that is all right. That is fine. We're gonna improvise here. I'm basically gluing this in the top corner on the other side. And I'm gonna cut myself a slightly longer strap because I want to show you all what I do. I basically just tuck in from both sides, is what I do. But in this case, I'm just going straight across like so, because I ran out of room. Improvisation for the win. We're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Glue here and here. You do not need a ton. You do not need a ton. Okay, if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of excess glue around the edge here and kick it. It's not necessary, but you could if you wanted to. Do this side over here. So now, this is what I wanted to show you. I wanted to do something like that, where it's bent under a little bit, basically. Again, it doesn't matter if it's perfect as long as it's more or less secure. Just like so. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my left glove because that's a little bit more, the hand plate is a little bit more dry on that. These are so nice and snug. Again, Nomex flight suit gloves. They're really, really nice. So what I do for wearing this is I go all 5 fingers through the bottom strap here. And then, once I have all 5 through, on the top one, I only put my first 4 fingers here, leaving out the thumb. And so that way, it looks like this, where I have the top strap all through here, and then I have the bottom strap kind of around my upper, or my lower wrist, kind of down at the bottom of the palm. And that's what that looks like. And that creates a nice, very comfortable, won't move anywhere kind of setup for both hands. So those are the hand plates. We're going to go ahead and set those aside and work on the forearms. As well as setting aside the gloves too. These also, when you pull on your forearms, these also fit nice and snug inside your arm. It's really nice. They go right over, no problem. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is the last and final step before weathering. And that is adding foam inserts. Unless you have massive forearms, you are not going to be able to fill all this gap right in here for the animated clone armor and everything. So that is why we add in some foam inserts. Now, I know from past experience that I need to double up on the EVA foam, or at least double up on one side and then add a little bit of a smaller piece on the other side, basically. What I do is I double up on the elbow side here and then add a singular piece on the inside cuff here. So, we're going to go ahead and do that. Just want to make sure that this fits nice and nice in there. Okay. Going to add some glue. We're going to kind of just press it down in there for a few moments. And this bit here, this is completely custom to you. So you may want to add like a piece at a time, fit it to your arm or wherever you're adding padding and everything, just to make sure that it fits. You want it kind of snug, but not so much to where it's going to cut off blood supply or be difficult to get on and off and everything. You want the foam to help kind of secure things rather than to restrict things.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we, of course, are going through the padding process right now. After you do your padding and getting all your strapping and whatever figured out, or at least, you know, kind of the padding in the areas for the most part, we're going to go through the weathering process. And the weathering process, I decided to tack on a separate video just because we are at over 2 hours on this particular video. I personally didn't anticipate how long this would take, but I also understand that people may not watch, this entire thing for 2 hours or whatever. But it's a good learning experience to kind of give you an idea of how long this process takes. Obviously, I did some time lapses here and there. And probably all in all, if I wasn't doing commentary, if I was just solely focused on building, it'd probably take, still about several hours to be able to put this entire thing together. Or at least in terms of the arms and everything. But they turned out great. I am really super pleased with how they turned out. Obviously, we'll get to the weathering in a part 2 video of, following up this next one. Hopefully, I'll have that out soon. I may potentially also lump the weathering videos all in one with like all of the other armor pieces, which might be something. Let me know in the comments below what you prefer. But this kind of shows you up to the weathering point, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to close it on here, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Feel free, of course, to subscribe, and feel free to like the video for more content, etc., etc. And we will see you all in the next one.